listening to Naughty Narratives, your weekly dose of hot takes, plot twists, and unfiltered book talk with your favorite romance-obsessed besties, Maddie and Kyla.
And Ginny today.
Welcome.
Hi.
We are so excited to have you here. Seriously, thank you for doing this. This is amazing.
We're so excited. Your books, we discovered them for the podcast, and we have fallen in love with your writing style. It's so good.
That's fabulous. I love to hear that.
Yes.
I would say that you're probably my current favorite author at this moment.
You kind of make a girl feel good. I love it. That's awesome. Thank you.
Of course.
You're welcome. Mine too. And I'm not a thriller reader. I've never been one to like thrillers, but I love these books.
That's a great compliment. Thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. So we sent some questions over, which I'm trying to pull up here. Maddie, do you have them pulled up?
I do.
Okay. You want to start us off?
Yeah, we wanted to start with your writing style. You have very vivid descriptions with cinematic descriptions, I feel like, and I would kind of want to know what inspires your imagery, and do you visualize your scenes before you write them out, or is this just something that all comes to you as you're writing?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that makes me a little unusual is that I tend to start my stories with a place. I think a lot of times authors start with characters or plot, but I tend to have a place in mind I want to set a story. And then I sort of ask myself, well, if this is where the story takes place, what kind of people might live there, and what problems could they have, and how can I make those problems worse? And that's how I come to, like that sense of where my stories happen. And I think because I do have a really strong sense of place, place is something I've always been really drawn to just as a person, as a traveler, as a writer. I think that that's something that I sort of naturally just bring out in the stories that I tell.
Okay.
So all of the stories that I have done so far, including book number 5, which I just finished up and submitted to my editor yesterday, are all set in places that I know really well and I've spent a lot of time, places that have been a big part of my life. So they're places that I don't necessarily have to research to write from, because I've lived in those places, or at least spent large amounts of chunks of time in those places. So I do visualize. Certainly when I write, I write a lot from sort of mental pictures, and I get very vivid mental pictures in my head of what that looks like. But mostly I'm drawing on personal experiences and places I know and love.
That is very cool.
I love that. I love how much detail you were able to put in it, but it's not overwhelming. Like if you read the Lord of the Rings series, sometimes his detail gets too much. But I love that yours is very detailed, but isn't like overwhelming.
No, it just makes the story so much better. Your detail is what draws us both in every time, I think.
Yes.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Of course.
I guess that kind of leads right into question 2 for us, where you said that you've lived in a lot of these places. How has your background influenced your narratives and writing techniques?
Yeah, well, I think in several ways. The first way is probably that I grew up in a very small town. I grew up in a rural town in Oklahoma, little bitty town. There were, I think, 75 kids in my graduating high school class. So a small town for sure. And then I went on and went to college in a small town in Arkansas, and lived and taught theater in Arkansas, in this small town, small liberal arts town with a small university for many, many years. So I tend to gravitate toward rural stories and small town stories. That's the kind of place that I know, and the kind of place that I love. And I know that small towns are rife with secrets and misunderstandings, and everything is very tangled and twisted underneath the surface. So I love that small town setting. The other way I think is that I do come from a background in theater. My degree's in theater, and I've spent pretty much all of my life up until I started writing about 4 or 5 years ago, working in the theater as a teacher and director, working primarily with high school and college students. So I bring a lot of that theater background into the way that I tell stories, I think, and partly that's that I do visualize it whether that's as a movie or as, in my case, sort of as a play on stage. I see those scenes play out very visually in front of me. I also think I brought a lot of, understanding of just kind of how stories are put together from the theater. I spent a long time directing, and like I said, when you do that, you're internalizing story and how story is shaped and how characters are developed and how plots work. So a lot of that I wouldn't even have known really was preparing me to write, but it turns out that it was. Particularly, I think with dialogue, we learn a lot about dialogue working in the theater. That's the only tool that actors and directors really have to work with. We don't get internal
Right.
narration, we don't get description. Every bit of plot, every bit of character, every bit of everything has to be in the dialogue. So I think there's a lot to be learned about dialogue from reading plays and from all those years working in the theater.
That is so cool. And that sounds like so much fun. I love that you have a background in that.
Yeah, that I can see that in your writing when you talk about how everything has to be like part of the plot, your dialogue. I can see that, and I love that.
Thank you.
I think it's cool to read books like that too, because I'm somebody who likes to visualize the entire thing. It's like watching a movie in my head. So when we read books like yours where the detail is there and we're actually able to do that, it's fun.
That's
For
great. I love
sure.
I'm curious, who has been your favorite character to write so far?
Oh gosh, it's kind of like when people ask me like, "What's your favorite book?" and I always say, "Well, it's kind of like picking your favorite child." Uh, I mean, I only have one son, so generally I can say him, but not always. Sometimes it's the dog. Um, 'Cause I love them all for different reasons. Um, there's a character in Dark and Shallow Lies who was the first character that kind of dropped into my head when I started to think about that story. Dark and Shallow Lies was my debut novel back in 2021. Um, and I didn't know who he was at the time. I had this picture of him and I could hear his voice in my head. And that was the character that became the character of Hart in that story. Who I loved writing that character. There was something about that character that I really, really loved writing. And then, there's a character sort of like that in every book. And it's not sometimes, I love writing my main characters, my protagonists, obviously. I think like most writers, there's a lot of me in all of those main characters. But there's something about those good secondary characters. There's always one that I just fall in love with in every story.
I was curious about Hart actually because Lowen in Where the Bones Sing reminds me a lot of Hart as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think those two characters have at their core something that is similar, but they, in most ways, they're about as different as they could be as far as the way
Right.
that they manifest in their personality and the way they wear that out into the world.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly is very, very, very different. But yeah, those are two of my absolute favorite characters. So I love that you see that seed of something in both of them.
That's so
For
much
sure.
fun.
It is, yeah. What has surprised you most about your readers' reactions to your books?
You know, most the thing that I always find the most fun, and I love, first of all, let me say that I love meeting readers, whether it's at book or signings. Um, I love doing that. So that's always great to get to do. Um, But one of my favorite things, and one of the things that always kind of makes me laugh, but I love at the same time, is when they ask me if is this a real place? Is this a real town? Is this a place I can visit? Can I go there? And I'm always like, no, all of my settings are made up. But I love that people love those places. I love that they love La Cachette, Louisiana, and Lucifer's Creek, Arkansas, and Hidden Glen Springs in Florida, and Whisper Cove Theater in Connecticut. I mean, I love that they want to know if these are places that they can visit in real life. So that's one of the most surprising things, and I always get a big kick out of that when it happens.
That is funny. We talked about that. I would like to be able to go to La Cachette. I think that would be so cool to go explore out there.
You did.
In Florida, it's not in the Louisiana Bayou, so it won't have that kind of like voodoo bayou aspect.
Mhm.
We do have gators. There's a town in Florida called Casadega, Florida, which is about 30 minutes north of Orlando, which is one of the inspirations for La Cachette, Louisiana. And Casadega does call itself the psychic capital of the world. And if you go there, it's just this tiny little town with a little town square. And nothing but like crystal shops and rock shops and tarot readers and fortune, tellers. And it's just a fascinating and strange, tiny little place sort of in the interior of Florida. So that's about as close as you can get to finding sort of the inspiration for La Cachette.
Okay. That would be a blast.
I know. Road trip.
Uh-huh.
So,
they do all sorts of cool stuff there. It's a really cool place.
I love that. And then we talked about this a little bit, me and Maddie personally, but it's been years since I've been down that way. But I really could feel like I was in Louisiana listening to your story. It really brought me back to traveling through, because we did a huge road trip when I turned 18, and we spent literally 2 weeks driving through Louisiana, Florida, and all of that. And so it really brought me back to that road trip. And I was like, man, like I feel like I'm here again.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
That's cool. What is your favorite genre to read yourself?
Thrillers and mysteries have always been my favorite, or anything that's spooky or haunted or creepy. I love anything Gothic or Southern Gothic. So anything that's got a little bit of the supernatural or the unusual or a mystery, anything along those lines is my favorite. When I was a kid, like at the book fair, when the book fair would come to school, I was always drawn to like anything that had like a ghost on the cover.
Mm-hmm.
A crumbling mansion, that kind of thing. And so I love thrillers, mysteries, horror, all of that. I'm not a big fantasy reader. And then I'm not like really into like high fantasy, like kingdoms and dragons and like swords and that kind of fantasy. But I do like my real world stories to have a little hint of the magical just in them. So that little hint of something that's not quite of this world or not quite expected. So that's why my stories, even though they're very much set in real places, always have that little thread of magic running through them.
That's so Maddie. Maddie's such a thriller reader, which is funny. Which is funny, when we started the podcast, we both fell in love with the Fourth Wing series by Rebecca Yarros. But that's really, as far as fantasy goes, that's like as much as Maddie's really gotten into. Yep. Whereas I'm a huge fantasy reader, but she's definitely more of the thriller.
I'm a big like Stephen King reader, and I like all those kinds of books, the guts and the gore of it.
Like it's just a different kind of fantasy. It's a different area of fantasy, but still fantastical. So absolutely, we get that.
Right.
Oh yeah. It's definitely opened my eyes to a whole new like set of books that I love, and I never considered myself a thriller reader. So to be able to read a book and be so involved and love it so much, almost more than some of my favorite fantasy novels, actually definitely more than some of my favorite fantasy novels. It's been fantastic. I love it. Yeah. What tips do you have for any aspiring authors out there?
Oh gosh. My first tip for anybody who wants to write is to be a reader first and foremost, to read as much as you can. That's really how I learned to write. I grew up in a family of writers. My mom is a writer. She wrote and writes mostly middle grade historical fiction. My father was a poet. My brother actually is a poet as well, and became the poet laureate for the state of Oklahoma for a while, which is where we lived at the time. And so I come from a family of writers, but I never wanted to be a writer. I was always, theater was always the art form that I gravitated towards. And that's probably because, my family were all writers, and I was like, I'm going to do something different. And so, yeah, I have always worked and loved in the theater, and that's always been the art form that had my heart. But all of that time I was growing up doing theater, I was always a reader. I always loved to read. So I was preparing myself to be a writer, whether I knew it or not. And then when I sat down to write, I had all of that wealth of understanding about story and character and how words work together and how sentences can be constructed and how words make us feel emotions. I had all of that to draw on. So reading, the first thing I would recommend. The other thing I would recommend right off the bat is to find yourself a really great group of writers to hang out with. whether that's online or in person in your local community, at your local library, wherever you can find writers to be with and talk about writing with and just hang out and have coffee with. Um, I always learn something from those writers when I spend time with them. But more importantly, I think I come away just feeling sort of inspired and like I've sort of been refilled. My creative well has been refilled. So that's my other main thing I would say.
That's awesome. And reading is definitely what got me into writing. So I can totally see that because I don't
It's
think I ever would have sat down.
right into writing for sure for a lot of people, sure.
Right. I know you said that you dropped off your next book, or you submitted your next book to your publisher. When can we, like, an idea of when that will be coming out?
Yeah, probably early 2027. Although that's not stone. We don't have an exact date yet. I just turned in the first version of that. So, we'll do some revision work on it and then it has to go through all of those many stages of, copy edits and printing and all of that. So it takes a while. But hopefully by the end of the summer, by maybe August, early September, we will be able to talk about that and sort of release some more details on that and get the word out and start, at least letting people know what that story is and what to look for. So, and it's something I'm really excited about. So I can't wait to talk about it.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
I'm excited.
We're both really excited.
I am curious, do you think any of your books would be made into movie or TV adaptations ever? Would you ever allow for that to happen?
Yes, absolutely. I would love for that to happen. Like most writers, I have a film and TV agent, and I have those conversations pretty frequently, with people at different producing organizations and things. And like what happens most of the time is we have those conversations and then you kind of, wait and they're like, hope you hear something, but you don't. And that's a really long process. That's a longer process even than the publishing process.
Right.
Um, there's always the hope that that will happen eventually. Like I said, those conversations happen. Those conversations continue to happen. So keep your fingers crossed. I would love it, for you to be able to see one of these or more, as I think they'd make great Netflix series, special series, or on some other streaming app. So hopefully, eventually.
Amazing. That would be very, very, very cool. I would definitely be tuning in.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
It's been so much fun. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this was amazing. We haven't ever had an author on before, and we really appreciate this. This is
You're first. Thanks for the invitation. That's awesome. Yay.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will definitely be buying the next book.
yes. See you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, welcome back.
Hello.
I can't believe I did that again. I can't believe it.
For you guys who are listening, we just talked probably a good 15 minutes or so about when the bones sing, and we were not recording.
Which, if you're a follower, that's the second time I've done it. Damn. All right.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, thank you, Ginny, for joining us for that interview earlier.
Yes, it was amazing.
It was. I still kind of get chills thinking about it. I'm not gonna lie. I thought it was so much fun. It was such a cool experience.
It was so cool. And so thank you to all of our listeners for joining in and making that possible for us, because that was super, super cool.
Yeah, thank you guys.
And I hope you enjoyed the interview too. We tried to ask good questions.
And now we want to talk to you guys about Ginny's newest book, Not the one that she just submitted, I wish. But
Hey, yeah. So we're talking about When the Bones Sing, but what I was gonna say is at least waiting for her next book, but there's not a cliffhanger because they're all standalones.
true.
I was
Very
thinking
true.
about that earlier. Where like I can be excited about her book, and for the next year and a half, I can be like, "Oh yeah!"
I agree.
Whereas Rebecca, I'm like, "Get it together. I need to know what happens." What happens when you end on a cliffhanger? Guaranteed, I'll buy the book. But damn it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, same here. It's fine. We all have our vices.
Anyway, When the Bones Thing.
I fucking loved this book.
So did I. I loved it so much. This is another young adult supernatural thriller. I almost said suspension thriller, like that made sense. All right. Supernatural thriller set in Arkansas?
Yes. Yeah. She called it the Ozarks.
Yes. The Ozarks. I couldn't remember if it was Arkansas or Alabama.
I think, well, in the beginning, she talks about it being like in both, but they're, I think, on the Arkansas side.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anywho, such a good book.
I loved the entire thing. I know that we talk about her detail all the time, but I really love her ability to illustrate the entire thing. Like, it feels like you're watching a movie while you're reading it, and I love it.
Yeah, I literally could like almost smell Lucifer's Creek and the trees. And sorry, the dog just ran right into me like I wasn't there.
You're in her way.
Apparently. What was she even going after? She's going after my nail polish. Weird. Yeah, it was just like we were there. It was so well written.
I was gonna ask you a question, and it just flew away from my mind so damn fast.
We weren't recording when it happened to me, but at least I'm not the only one tonight.
Lord. How did you feel about all the characters in this book?
There wasn't a single character I didn't like or didn't feel was written well or anything like that. So I loved all of the characters. As far as my favorite character, it was probably Nana. I don't know why, but I really liked her.
Liked Nana too. I really like Grandma Pearl.
Yeah, I think both of them, Grandma Pearl and Nana, like they were up there as far, and they're total side characters, but they're just such little besties. It's us in the future. Hopefully with less murder and
God, I would hope so.
We're not gonna kill our own husband trying to kill our abusive the other person's abusive husband.
No, that was so wild.
So sad.
And the fact that like they never arrested her for it, but yet nobody would ever touch anything that she ever made after that. Like, that was so sad in the beginning. At first I was like, why the fuck are they dumping out her coffee? That's so mean. What the fuck? Like,
and then you find out she poisoned her husband and they ruled it an accident, but in reality, I mean, she was trying to kill her best friend's husband.
It was an accident. She just killed the wrong person.
Yeah. Yep. And then everybody was like, yeah, no, you accidentally put rat poison in your husband's coffee.
Why do you think she was able to feel the bone song so much earlier than her mom and her Nana?
The death of her mom.
That's fair. Do you think she just wasn't able to place what the feeling was at the time?
No, because I I think the grief of losing her mom, we don't know that her mom's dead necessarily,
Right.
but I think the grief of her mom not being there anymore is what caused her to feel the bones sing.
I see what you're saying. That's a fair point.
Because she never felt her mom's bones. Because it kind of tells that she can't ignore it. She has to go find the bones.
Yeah, that scene where we get to see her with Lowen and oh god, why can't I remember his name all of a sudden?
Zayden? No. What was his
Shit.
Xander? Yes, because she called him Zan.
Yes. That the scene where we get to see them all together and she's humming to the point of a physical vibration where they can actually feel like the feeling coming off of her, and I don't know, the description there was so good. It just made me feel like you were there and you could actually feel what she was experiencing, and having to try and deal with all of that must have been so overwhelming, while also trying to keep your cool with your best friend, while also this dude's trying to kiss you and you don't know what the fuck to do. It's just like,
well, and I was thinking about like I don't think she's necessarily suspicious of Lo at this point, but I think there's a little bit of like, I wouldn't say suspicion, but intuition that there's something wrong there. Like, obviously he's seeing the dead, and so like she's concerned for his mental well-being, but I think there's like part of her that's like he has something to do with this.
right.
But she doesn't think he killed those people. I mean,
I
she
thought
never
it was
thought
schizophrenic.
that. With the magic, I was honestly figured it had something to do with that.
It's kind of hit and miss because it's kind of hard to tell if it's actually going to be related to magic or if it's not, in the beginning of the book. And so for me, I was like, well, either you're schizophrenic or you're going to end up being magical in some way, shape, or form. And which I would have taken either. But that's just what I kept thinking. I was like, girl, he's schizo. You got to stop just feeding into it.
I mean, you can't be like, they don't exist. I mean, obviously
Right.
they did to him, even if he was schizophrenic, it did. Those visions totally existed for him. So I think she was managing the best she could. I did not foresee that Lo was burying the bodies, which is just a weird thing. Why was Ira dumping the kills there?
The way I interpreted it was because he truly thought that Lo was Turley's son. So he hated him, and so therefore was leaving him these horrendous bodies to have to clean up. I think it was out of hate.
Just seemed weird to leave it there. But
I think it's weird still, like, because regardless, it's not like it was his fault.
Left them in the forest where they died.
Yeah,
the odds are, I mean, she would eventually find the bodies because, but you're you're not involving anybody else. Less likely to get caught, in my opinion.
Well, and did he do that before or after he took the other hunters back to the lodge? Because I'm curious if these people helped him mangle these bodies on this guy's front lawn. Like, that's just weird. Wouldn't you, as somebody who's paying a high-end amount of money to do something like that, you wouldn't think you'd ever want that getting back to you?
Right.
I don't know. That was odd to me, and I felt so bad for him mentally. I don't even know what I would do if I... No wonder you were seeing the dead. Like, you had buried all of their horrifically decaying bodies.
Yeah. What was it, like 27 of them or something like that?
Something like
she
that,
said she had found 34 over her whole life.
Mm-hmm. 27 in the last 2 or 3 years.
Right. Yeah, I did not see that that coming. What did you make of Dove's dad? Like, I know there was a little suspicion around him, but beyond that,
I was just kind of confused with their relationship. I couldn't really tell why they didn't have one, and I didn't think that it was because of her power. That it just seemed odd to me that he would marry a woman with that type of power and then shun his daughter for having it. So I don't know. I just felt like it was kind of weird, but I don't know. I definitely didn't think that he was just sitting there building stained glass windows all night long. I can tell you that. Like, either there's no man that loves his work that damn much.
no, even an artistic person is, eventually you experience burnout. You're not going to spend
Right.
months working on a project that.
No. And I didn't expect him to be out looking for his wife's bones, but I don't know. I really thought it was him for a while there. And when Hannah went missing, I was like, okay. And then with
we
what
started.
Candy was saying.
Yeah, where they saw the man with the beard
Mm-hmm.
and the pin, the little angel pin being in his desk. When she found that and she was confused at first, she was like, "Oh, that's weird." I was like, "It's your dad!"
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god!
I thought the same thing. I was like, "That's his trinket drawer. That's where he keeps his trinket." And then I was so wrong.
That would be. Why would you leave? I would have. Why would you leave it there of all places?
Mm-hmm.
I totally thought her mom was going to be buried with the crepe myrtle bushes.
I thought so too.
I was like dead set. I was like, that's why the rose is there every night.
And I thought that's why Ira kept saying that they'd never find her. It's like they'd be too oblivious to look right there or something like that. But I think he was just being a narcissist.
Clearly, that's what it was because they found her.
I cried when Lowen went over the cliff. I will tell you that.
I was working. I didn't read last night. I was too burnt out from being just socializing, and ended up deciding I would finish it during work because I didn't have very much left. And yeah, so I was just sitting there like this is girl. I was like, keep it together, keep it together, keep it together. You're working. Technically, working. Hopefully my boss doesn't listen. No, he knew what I was doing. It's fine.
No, I was sitting there in bed and Alex was playing video games and I just took off my glasses and dragged my hand down my face and I was bawling and he's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "That was such bullshit for nothing. He's alive."
I feel played.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Pretty much.
What did you think of the religious aspect of the town?
I mean, it tracks because
Bible Belt for sure.
But I definitely thought all of them were weird. Like, it was bizarre to me that most of them were so rude to the hill people, and yet most of them were buying trinkets and potions and things from the hill people. So I don't know. It just felt very
two-faced.
Yeah. Like classist. Kind of,
relatable.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I did think it was cool though that we got to experience kind of every single little shop that was in town though. We either heard about the band and the people drinking and dancing, or we heard about people having breakfast at the diner and the art studio and stuff where they'd go in and they'd buy her dad's little. Now, why is the word always leaving my brain? They hang from the ceiling.
The sun catcher?
Yes, those. Thank you.
You're welcome. I like how you looked over at Alex like he was going to be able to help you. Like
he's not even in here.
10 out of 10. I love it. Oh, man.
It's been one of those. One of those days.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Um, yeah, I like that too, that we got that small town aspect. I thought it definitely fit for the area that the book was in, the religious aspect of it, for
Yes.
sure. I did think Turley was a little weird for
Yeah.
a creature, like not just like it was a cult.
Oh
It
yeah.
wasn't just a religion, like it was a cult. How far into it, but it seems like once Turley died, the churchgoers, I mean, they still had their opinion of Dove, which, to be fair, she could find dead bodies.
Yeah.
I could understand why they were concerned for her soul.
Fair.
But as far as like everything else, like not liking the hill people and stuff like that, it was definitely very culty. But it seemed once Turley died, they didn't care as much, or at least it wasn't talked about as much.
Right. I was kind of hoping that we would get to see more of her mom after everybody kind of started mentioning seeing her ghost or the roses being left around. We get that glimpse the night that Lo comes running up to her, and I wish that we would have just gotten like 2 sentences more, even with her being able to see her.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, that's fair. I also think it was kind of perfect the way it was too, though.
Oh,
like,
I don't
it's like
disagree.
a weird aspect to it. We find out Ira. I can't remember what we've talked about because we recorded for 15 minutes prior. We talked about. How did you feel about the twist that Ira was the one? I guess he's not really doing the killing because people are paying him to hell. How did you feel about the whole twist of who was doing the killing?
I was I don't know, because through the entire book I went back and forth between Lo, her dad, and Ira and Turley. Those were my like 4 people that I thought it was. Even I thought it was even Xander for a second there. I was like, I don't know how or why, but there's something off about you, broski. I don't know what it is. And I don't know, I went back and forth, especially with her dad and Ira, because I really thought that her dad was like shape-shifting into the Howler, and that maybe Ira was covering for him, or he was.
And that's what I thought it was
Yeah.
that he was out there killing people at night, their buddy. Because I was like, why is he so obsessed with making the Howlers the stained glass piece? And, why did he like push Ira, which I don't even know if that's even the case now. But,
Right.
I was definitely thinking that.
Well, I'm kind of curious if maybe her dad is so obsessed with the Howler, because we see the Howler for that little split second in the woods at the end of the book, and I wonder if him on any of his adventures traipsing through the woods, maybe he actually experienced it himself, and that's why he's so drawn to it.
That could be.
I don't know. But I don't know. I really enjoyed the twist. It did catch me wildly off guard, and I thought it was so, as shitty as it was, so cool how every story lined up together. Like, they put together that he killed Lo's mom, and then they put together that he killed the Dovey's mom, and why. And yeah, I really, really liked that. I don't understand why the fuck they didn't all just get back in the truck and drive the damn thing down on a fucking bent rim. I would have. But
I think that truck was pretty much done for. The way I imagined like an old, I wouldn't say 1950s, but like in that era, like 60s, 70s truck in 2000. Gosh, what was it? The book takes place in like 2002, 2004, somewhere in that area.
I think so, because they have a wall phone. They don't.
Well, she says that they don't have cell service up there, so they have to have
that's
the
right.
walk up.
That's right.
So I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's the early 2000s. And so the truck's got to be like 40 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they'd barely run it. You know, the damn thing needs an oil change.
Fuck, that suspension probably needs to be greased.
So I understand leaving the truck there. They also found out that what's his name was alive. Xander's. They had to go get him.
No, I didn't know that. I understand that. I'm talking about when they got Xander out and they decided to follow the river down. I wouldn't have done that. I would have climbed back up.
That whole thing and the way it was described, that was so good.
I was shocked. I was like, no fucking way. I went back. I was like, hold on. Did I drop my book? Like,
yeah, no, because I was reading on my Kindle. I was like, I think it fucked up somewhere. And like, and then I flipped to the next page and I was like, what? Total deja vu. I didn't realize I had read that exact paragraph until like I had finished it, and I was like, that was weird. Flip page. Oh, that was so funny.
It was so good. I was not expecting it, and I don't know. It just added to the detail of everything that she does in her books. I loved that part.
Mm-hmm.
I did.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
This is kind of going on to lose the whole following the creek. I really wonder if it was the magic of it that made them come back to the cave. Like they knew there was something there that they needed to finish, because otherwise that creek runs all the way through town.
Right. That's true. That's a good point. I don't know. I found it interesting. Not interesting. I found it spooky when Xander was just stolen right off the trail behind her immediately.
So did I.
And that kind of, even more so for me, like leaned into the shape-shifting aspect of things, because I was like, there's no fucking way a human is doing that in woods like they're describing.
Right, where it's so thick that they're getting cut up from the brambles and stuff. I was like, there's no way. I thought the same thing. Especially because Lo ran off and was gone.
Well, and it's bizarre to me. We didn't hear Xander even make a peep. Like, he didn't scream, he didn't squeal. It was just silence. So I found it weird too that the sheriff just sent her home that night.
Yeah.
Like,
he's all, oh, your friend's missing, and I'm gonna go get the body. You stay home.
Yeah. Bye.
Yeah. Hopefully we can discover the cause of death on this one. I was like, ew. You have the worst medical examiner, and ew.
Yeah. Yeah. That was also when I really thought it was Lo.
Yeah, because he knew how Riley died.
Riley, yep. I did like how they tied into all the ghosts at the end, though, coming out of the woods and like vanishing
and scaring. They helped scare. I know
Ira.
Ira, yeah, he could see him. They all saw them. I don't know if Xander saw him, but the rest of them did.
I think Xander was still knocked out. I don't think he comes to until her dad has shot or pushed Ira off the cliff. Good riddance. Bye.
For sure. I mean, he killed at least 2 people on his own and then facilitated the death of 27 more. So
it kind of makes me wonder if her dad was at all intuitive to that. Like, because if they were all best friends growing up, I mean, you'd think you'd kind of feel something, you know? Just, I don't know. I feel like had Ira come to like her funeral and stuff, you just kind of feel a vibe. It would just kind of feel different. like he's hiding something, or that maybe he's compensating. I don't know.
Maybe.
Because that's a lot of people to have murdered, but 2 women that he was close to, you know.
Yeah, but they all assumed Mama just ran away.
It's true.
And it didn't seem like anybody investigated Claire's death.
Which is so sad and weird.
Mm-hmm. And she just drowned in the creek.
Yeah, nobody thinks anything else about it.
A creek? Yeah, I know. That was weird. What did you think about the storms? I thought that was such a nice touch.
I really liked the touch of the storms, honestly. I think it just added more detail to it and made me feel more like I was in it with them, especially the scene where they're trying to cross the creek at that little shitty spot they cross at every day, and Lo almost slips, or well, he does slip, but he makes it across.
It reminded me a lot of the storms that we get here.
Mm-hmm. Especially in August.
Yeah. And I mean, I've experienced flash flooding up in Zion National Park, like a flash flood like that. And so I very much was able to be like there in the moment, because I was like, oh, I've experienced rain so hard, hitting you so hard it feels like ice picks needling into your skin. And like I remember like riding the UTVs when it was pouring rain, and you'd be going 50 miles an hour to go up the mountain to get some
being
ding dong that rolled over.
Well, the people who sunk their machine,
Oh my gosh!
People literally drive their machine into what they called a puddle. It was a fucking lake at this point, guys. Like we could barely see the roof of the machine. That's how deep they drove it.
It was such a common occurrence that summer that I got prank called by our technicians. They called me pretending to be a customer and said that they had driven their machine into the lake, and I was so like prepared to be calling like special tow services to get this machine out of the lake because it had happened in the past. That's how crazy that was.
But that was all from flash flooding and flash storming all of our monsoons that summer.
Yep.
No, I really liked that aspect of it. I'm trying to think. Oh, the song. I thought it was real bizarre that nobody could put together who the song was about until the very end of the book.
They're pretty smart kids, so I was like, you're not putting 2 and 2 together? Like, as soon as I heard the words of that song, I knew exactly what was going on.
Yep.
Heard the words, read the words.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so glad that Nana and Grandma Pearl started talking at the end of the book.
I am too. I was hoping that they would. I was hoping we'd get to see reunification between them.
Yeah. It wasn't anybody's fault, really, that Nana accidentally killed her husband. You know, like...
No. And I get needing to grieve for a while. I think maybe they gave it a little more time than what they needed to, but I get why they did stop talking. You know?
I mean, that would be really hard to get past. But like, you killed your husband trying to kill my husband. It's a wild storyline, but also
it really is.
What did you think of Jonah in the end, the deputy?
I thought
cocky asshole at the beginning.
I was gonna say I thought he was a twat at the beginning, and I thought he was a twat at the end. He didn't really change for me.
Really? I definitely thought he was a twat at the beginning. I was kind of like, this motherfucker is so annoying. But by the end of it, I was like, I mean, he's a better cop than the sheriff, so I'll give him that.
I don't disagree with that, but I don't know. At the end, I was just kind of like, do you like her? Why are you being nice to her all of a sudden? Because he went from bullying her to
I don't know
well,
if he
maybe
was.
not bullying, but she kind of took it that way, or because I could see how it would be like joking between friends, but maybe she just didn't take it that way because they weren't
friends.
really friends.
Like he's trying to build a friendship and she's like, why the fuck are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Like, that was the vibe I got. Where he was like, yeah, we're buddy, and she's like, I don't know you. Like, I have to go unbury this body. Could you not make grotesque jokes about me? That'd be cool.
It's funny how she describes it too, because she talks about going to school and she's like, yeah, nobody talks to the hill people. I don't have any friends. And then he tries over and over again. She's just like, no. It's like, bro, you could have friends. I think you're maybe not trying.
I think you've attached yourself to Lo, and that's all you care to be friends with.
Which, speaking of that entire situation, it was really fucking weird to me that she was having these new feelings for Lo, but then also like being really okay with Xander kissing her on the side.
I think the first kiss was kind of shocking. I was kind of like, all right, I could see her freezing up, not knowing what to do, and him. But I don't understand why he thought he was like, yeah, she dug that. I'm gonna go for a second one.
Well, and it's a bit not even a page before that.
She's telling Lo that she loves him.
Yeah, but she's also sitting there telling us, she's like, I can tell that Xander's trying to figure out what Lowen and I are to each other. And I was like, well, clearly he doesn't care. He just laid one on you. He doesn't give a shit about what Lowen thinks. Like,
but I also have to remember that they're all 17.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
You're still figuring yourself out at 17. I don't know what you want.
Well, but then like they kiss again, and Lowen's all awkward about it and kicks some dirt into the pond or whatever, the stream. And then she fucking kisses him when he gets into the ambulance, and I was like, all right, you just made out with Lowen in front of your dad, which was weird, and nobody said anything about it.
Well, her and Lowen were already sharing a bed. I'm pretty sure everybody in that town assumed they were screwing. Like,
yeah, I know. I just thought it was funny that all her dad had to say about it was a solid grunt, and that was it. Uh-huh.
That's how I imagined it too. It was just.
I did think it was funny he shoved him into the bed of the truck though to hold the fucking stained glass howler all the way up to the fucking lunch.
He was like, I can't believe you stayed in my house last night. I realize you're best friends. Yeah. No, I'll get revenge in the only way I know how. Which is funny because they don't have, her and her dad don't have a great relationship or a strained relationship.
She doesn't feel like they do, it seems.
I think he was just heartbroken.
Yeah,
I think he was worried about her going up and finding those bodies and how stressful and
I mean, I can only imagine the toll that would take on your mental health. Look at what it did to Lo.
Yeah, and he wasn't. I mean, I was like, he wasn't digging up the bodies. He was.
He was burying them.
He was doing the exact opposite. He was burying them. I still think it's wild that that's what he decided to do with them. Like, he could have done. He could have put them in the creek. I don't know. Away from his property, but easily found. Like, it was just weird that he made them so difficult to find. Yeah. Like, I mean, it took her, 2 months before the bones started to sing for Riley?
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was odd, too. I didn't fully understand.
And that's fine, because in the end, it was a damn good book, and I don't need all my questions answered.
No, I really like reading a book where I'm okay with that, actually. Like, it was enough. This book was enough for me.
There will always be questions to have, because even if they explained it, like, we look at it from an outside perspective, and we're like, I don't understand why he would do that. But in his head, it was, this is the only choice I have.
Yeah.
So he might not have ever considered putting him in the creek.
Right. And I also think that sometimes people get lost in forgetting that these are books that we're discussing, and more than likely we are making up what's happening to these characters at a certain point. You know, these people were just written. It's not like they're actually thinking about what to do next. So I think it's good to take a step back and remember that occasionally, although most of the time I'd like to stay in the reality of not that.
So it's okay for there to be small details.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's funny. That's so funny. Well, do you want to announce what book we're reading next, or you want me to?
I remember the title, but I don't remember the author's name. Do you have that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We are going to be reading Lights Out by Nevessa Allen.
Yes, we are excited for this one.
Yes.
It's supposed to be a comedy, right? You said?
Yeah. Yep, a dark romance comedy.
I'm excited. That's different from anything we've read.
I know. I'm pretty excited. She actually just released the second. They're standalone novels, but they're like in a series, kind of. She just released the second one. So, but,
Amazing.
And then she got bullied off the internet somehow.
Rip.
Well. I don't even know how it happened. All I know is that she got bullied off the internet for something. And I'm like, you know what? I don't care. Everybody gets bullied off the internet for stupid shit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of just 2025. Yeah, everybody gets their feelings hurt over everything, and people are dicks. So.
And then I just wanted to remind our listeners who listen quick, my second book releases the day this episode comes out. So today, if you're listening, it's actually, I got an email that it became available to buy tonight. I don't know why, because it's technically not supposed to be available till tomorrow, but thanks, Amazon.
It's out there.
It's out there. It's published. You can either purchase it, or if you're listening before July 8th, you can sign up for the giveaway that I have going on. I forgot to pay for those bookmarks today. I love how things pop into my head while I'm sitting here. But yes, Wings of Fate and Fury, which is the second book in the Dragon Kiss trilogy, is available on Amazon.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you everybody for joining us, and we hope you seriously love this episode the way that we did.
Yes, this book was phenomenal. Definitely 5 stars.
Yes.